When a magnitude 7.2 earthquake hits, our modern instinct is to fight it with rigid strength. But under extreme shear force, concrete and steel structures simply do not hold. The rigid column just bursts. Look at this collapsed highway. It's a textbook example of what happens when a massive, rigid structure tries to absorb millions of joules of kinetic energy. It snaps. Now look at this. This is the 5-story Horyu-ji pagoda in Japan. It's over 100 feet tall, built entirely from timber, and it has stood perfectly intact for 1,400 years, through thousands of cataclysmic earthquakes. It has no deep foundation, zero poured concrete, no steel rebar, it doesn't even use metal nails. To see how that is physically possible, we have to freeze time right at the moment a seismic wave strikes the base, and track that shockwave as it travels upward. Because to understand exactly how this ancient tower survives, we have to unlearn the modern instinct to rely on rigid strength. The moment the ground violently shifts, the base of the pagoda doesn't resist the earth, it yields to it. If we pull the structure apart, you see why. These floors aren't locked vertically, they are independent, hollow wooden boxes stacked loosely. As the seismic wave travels up, the boxes slide. 1 leans left, 2 leans right, 3 leans left. A kinetic phase-shifting snake dance. By swaying in opposite directions, the floors actively cancel out momentum. They stop the seismic wave from turning the tower into a giant whip. But all that opposing movement creates an enormous amount of shear force right at the seams between the floors. Under the eaves are thousands of interlocking wooden bracket arms called Tokyo. Without a single nail, these joints compress, deform, and slide against one another. This diagram shows exactly what's happening inside the wood. It's a process called frictional hysteresis. That intense, dry wood-on-wood grinding physically converts the earthquake's destructive kinetic energy into harmless heat. This unbolted timber frame actively consumes and grinds away the shockwave's power. Notice the massive, heavy ceramic-tiled eaves extending outward. They act like a tightrope walker's balance pole, increasing rotational inertia so the swaying tower doesn't tip. Whatever seismic energy survives the brackets and the swaying boxes finally converges right on the exact center of the building, and that is where you find the Shinbashira, a colossal cedar tree trunk running down the core. You would assume this column holds up the roof, but look at the bottom. It hangs freely, suspended above the foundation. Acting like a giant pendulum, the trunk counterswings against the swaying outer boxes, softly colliding from the inside, arresting extreme movement. The core doesn't hold the tower up. It acts as a massive, ancient tuned mass damper, an internal shock absorber. When the tremors finally stop, gravity takes over. The heavy, unfastened tiers just slide smoothly back into their resting positions, perfectly recentered. The Miyadaiku, the master carpenters who engineered this, didn't have modern mathematical calculus to model vibration resonance. Instead, they watched how living trees survived severe typhoons. They observed that a tree doesn't survive a storm by being rigid, it survives by bending. That deep architectural intuition allowed them to build structures that solved complex vibration control more than a millennium before the math existed. This ancient pendulum design is the blueprint for how we build in the 21st century. This is the 634-meter Tokyo Skytree. Its central concrete core is physically decoupled from the outer steel frame, acting as a massive hanging weight, a direct descendant of the pagoda's damping mechanics. By allowing that core to swing out of phase with the outer structure, it reduces the modern tower's seismic vibration by up to 50%. To survive the most violent forces on Earth, we eventually had to accept what those ancient carpenters already knew. You don't fight the earth by standing rigid. You survive by learning how to bend.